Thanks, guys. Just want to kick things off. Good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining us for this important discussion around beyond the firewall, physical security for UK data centers. I just want to give you some background around who I am and the organization that I work for. So my name is Peter Dempsey. I'll be the moderator for today. I work with a company called Access Communications. I've been in the security industry for 32 years. Access Communications is the global leader of video surveillance products in the world. We operate in 180 countries, founded in 1984, introduced the world's first IP camera in 1996, and we've been operating in the data center space for the last 10 years. And we are the leading security vendor for all the key global hyperscale accounts and co-location providers. So from a data center standpoint, our approach is a layered approach from the first layer, which is the outer perimeter, all the way directly into the gray and white space to in-rack solutions with optical sensors, thermal sensors, thermometric sensors as well. So today, I have joining me Stephen Faye and Stuart Miller. Guys, if you just want to give yourselves an introduction there, please.
Yeah, I'll go first. Thanks a lot, Peter, and it's a real privilege to be part of this panel discussion today. I look forward to discussing this topic with you. Stuart Miller, been in the network security industry for the last 20 years. I represent a company called OryxAlign. OryxAlign historically were a traditional managed service provider, providing typical general IT services to mid-market and enterprise clients. My role here is leading CDP, which is construction, data center, and property. And we have three pillars that sit in that space. One is network, two is cyber security, and three is cloud transformation services. So we cross all three borders and specialize in engineering services, designing and building network infrastructure for both commercial property and data center market.
Thanks, Stuart. Steve?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Peter and Stuart. My name's Steve Faye. I'm the Managing Director of a company called Safecrowds Group. We are an integrated security service provider. So we deliver to data centers and our clients TVRAs, VDAs, K9 security solutions in terms of manpower and temporary and permanent installation of bollards. It's mostly permanent for data centers, obviously. And that's bollards and fences. I've been in and around security probably for the last 18 to 20 years on different sides of the fences. And I am a certified counterterrorism practitioner and looking forward to discussions today.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. So I just want to sort of set the scene for everyone. So in September 2024, the UK government officially classified data centers as critical national infrastructure, a move that reflected a growing importance and underpinning from cloud services and AI to national security and economic resilience. The designation brings with it not only highlighting expectations for cyber protection, but also a new focus on physical security, from perimeter protection, access control to environmental risk mitigation and operational continuity. Today, we'll explore the shift, means and practice. How do we go beyond traditional firewalls and cybersecurity to ensure our physical security infrastructure is equally robust? What are the risks, responsibilities, and opportunities that come with this elevated status, and how we can, as an industry, collaborate to meet these challenges head on? So today, within our discussions, we're going to focus on three specific areas. So we're going to look at strategic and policy level. We're going to look at operational and risk assessment. And then we're going to look at collaboration and future outlook. And what I will encourage you to do in the chat, any questions associated with any of the topics, if you can put them in there, and we'll do our best. We've allocated some time at the end to pick up on the questions and answers. And as I said, we'll do our best to try and answer as many as we possibly can. Okay, so to kick things off, a question I'll pose around strategic and policy level. So what does the CNI designation mean for data center operators in practical terms, especially from a physical security standpoint? Steve, if I put that to yourself first, what's your thoughts on that?
CNI designation transforms a data center's physical security planning into a strategic intelligence-led discipline. The focus is on stage threat-driven design, so TVRAs, VDAs, removal of environmental vulnerabilities, so objects usable for concealment or attack staging, and the integration of certified HVM barriers, so secure fencing, controlled access systems. I'd include VRN validation in that, but all structured to deter, delay, and prevent high-impact attacks, such as VBIEDs and IED placement. I believe that ensures the data center not only complies with the CNI expectations, but achieves a resilient, threat-informed posture capable of sustaining operations under credible hostile conditions.
Okay, thanks very much, Dave, for your feedback. Stuart, what's your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, it's obviously quite a broad topic here, but obviously now as part of the critical infrastructure, it's, you know, we're no longer just looking at protecting private investment and reputational damage to an organisation. It's, you know, we're in line now with certain government interests in terms of security, country economy as such. So what we'll see and what we believe is going to become heavily more regulated, more government legislation and oversight. Testing, monitoring, reporting of incidents will be more defined. Compliance to new frameworks, which will now become compulsory, they'll be enforced. And then we'll be looking at kind of additional resilience, additional redundancy that will need to be deployed, multi-layered approach in terms of control metrics and additional frameworks that we need to comply with. Yeah, so fundamentally from an operational point of view, there will be a lot that will change. Some has already, and it's a moving position at this moment in time. But yeah, we'll see a lot changing practically, and we believe a lot will be driven by legislation, which will be in line with other sectors of CNI.
Yeah, no, cool. I think a key focus here is around the point you'd made, resilience, redundancy, you know, from a cybersecurity perspective, all the way to the ground up. It does very much change. No, cool. Thanks for the responses there, guys. If we move on, how do you see the role of government evolving in supporting regulating the physical security in the sector now? Steve, if we go back to yourself again, please.
Oh, the government's role in data center physical security is shifting from guidance to governance, and that will introduce formal standards, TVRA, VDA oversight, and integrated cyber physical regulation. I'd expect to see closer collaboration through intelligence sharing, accredited compliance, and co-developed secure by design frameworks, so that ensure proportionate threat-led protection and resilience across the UK's critical data infrastructure network.
Okay, thanks very much, Steve. Stuart, what's your thoughts on here?
Yeah, we're going to see, or we believe we're going to see, you know, a drive from compulsory frameworks. Government already enforce in other sectors that we know, transport, water, rail as such. So, you know, these metrics are already in place. So the government involving regulations in our industry are certainly coming, which will elevate the standard, of course. Benchmarks such as NIST, NIST2, being compliant to them, depending, obviously us now as an essential entity, there'd be elements of legislation we need to comply to across the EU. We've had the CS&R bill, which was posed in government this year, 2025, which will again help to elevate and bring the standards into a new level. It could be looking at dedicated governing bodies, governance and oversight from these governing bodies. We'll definitely see more legally binding requirements and assessments. And yeah, that's kind of the direction that we see the government shaping and involving the way that we now become CNI.
Yeah, I think a couple of really important points that you put out there around NIS2.
Yeah.
So it's really important that obviously we're aware that the UK is not bound to NIS2 because of post-Brexit. But the reality is that the operators that are working within the UK, they're all working outside of the UK in the wider EMEA region. So the implications of NIS2 they have to comply. And the penalties around not compliance is like up to 10 million or 2% of your global turnover. So it's really, really important when we speak around NIS2 and the focus around from a cybersecurity and software focus. But equally, I feel is quite important is when we talk around CER, Critical Entity Resilience Act as well, which is very much a focus on physical resilience and a hardware focus as well. And it's really important to note that the UK Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill very much aligns to these two directives. So there's huge importance in terms of these directives, how the UK aligns, and what exactly is going on in that space. So no, thanks very much for your comments and feedback there. Okay, so if we move on, if we look at lessons learned from other CNI sectors like energy, transport, when it comes to physical resilience, Stuart, I'll push that one to yourself. What's your thoughts in this space?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so energy, transport, all those other sectors have had kind of decades of experience, compared to us. We're relatively new in this process. So there's definitely going to be a lot to learn. I guess it's about how we adopt and how we engage, and what there is that we can utilize for quick wins or long-term gain. But obviously, successes and failures that they would have seen, valuable lessons that we can learn from them. But we already, as an organisation, work with clients that sit in the CNI sector. So we've not saying we have a head start, but we've got good visibility of what's likely to follow for this particular sector. Areas where we feel there's definitely room for improvement is more coordination through design stages. So we get involved very, very early on in new build or retrofit or expansion projects within the DC sector in the UK and into Europe as well. And sometimes we see a lack of coordination through REBA process. And in networking and security, we talk about high and low level, but that does come into positions around stage 3, stage 4 within REBA. And sometimes, and more often than not, we see either no introduction to the OT security, or just a lack of depth or integration awareness around what should be enforced or implemented. So I feel in some other markets and sectors that they're a lot further ahead. And that could be because they're more mature, they're further established, they're not growing at the rate as what the DC sector currently is for us. So I'm sure there's gaps there around skill set, knowledge, but there will be huge knowledge that could be shared from other sectors. Also, the likes of integration of technology. So not just from a design perspective, but we're seeing the way that technology being integrated slightly behind the curve as well. Obviously, the majority of technology that's going into these DC spaces is critical services, BMS, EMS, PMS, anything that's kind of supporting, maintaining, running facility alongside physical security. The way that these technologies integrate and are supported from a cyber perspective probably isn't to the level that we see in other industries as well.
Cheers, Stuart. Thanks for that. From an access standpoint, like we've been operating in this space in the UK for some time, working with National Grid, National Gas, Cadent Gas. And I think what's really important to know is if we look at what's already in place, if we talk around CAPS approval, Critical Asset Protection Programme, or we look at the NIPSA programme, the National Protection Security Authority, which replaces CPNI. From an access standpoint, we're working with inside all these frameworks. So we're in the space, we've been operating in the space for some time, and a lot of what we've already been doing is just going to sort of fall over into the wider data center space as well.
Yeah.
So no, look, really, really interesting. Steve, what's your thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, I believe that the sectors like aviation, energy, they definitely show the value of security by design. They have enforced standoff zones, continuous assurance, and certainly active intelligence sharing. So there's a hell of a lot of takeaways that can be had from those sectors. I think DCs can strengthen resilience by adopting those principles and integrating, again, a TVRA-led design, but the layered HVM protection, cyber physical coordination within a regulated and again collaborated framework aligned to national protective security standards.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Steve. So let's move on to our second theme, which is around operational and risk management. I'll push this one directly back to yourself, Steve. What are the most pressing physical threats facing UK data centers today in cyber, in your opinion?
I believe that DCs now face diverse physical threats beyond cyber, so including VBIED or ramming attacks, insider compromise, drone surveillance, activist disruption, and utility sabotage. Let's call them threat actors exploit perimeter gaps, contractor access, external dependencies, and therefore effective resilience demands intelligence-led planning, robust HVM measures, secure perimeters, access validation, and a coordinated physical procedural protection across all those operational environments.
Cheers, Dave. I just want to pick up on two things you said there, which is really, really relevant for me, for access now at the moment. One point you mentioned was around drone surveillance. So we're getting a massive uptake, not just in the UK, but across the whole of Europe in EMEA, around drone detection within the data center environment. So we've got advanced analytics that we actually put directly onto cameras, which point to the sky to detect these drones. So it's an ever increasing threat. And one other really interesting one you picked up in there is activist disruption. So we've all probably seen in the news, there was a major activist disruption incident in Amsterdam there a couple of months ago. We've had one recently also in France, and one other significant one in Germany. And it's really, really interesting because there's a key focus here on the force layer of protection, the fencing layer, and the approach by some organizations historically, how they've used to do that has been quite poor. And it's really, really interesting now, especially on this particular point. We're seeing a massive ramp up in terms of the physical security element and how they can deploy technology solutions to solve these issues. So, yeah, really, really important and really interesting points there, Steve. Stuart, what's your take on this?
Yeah, the question's obviously around the physical threats. So, as Steve's mentioned, we'll be looking at or seeing, sabotage or deliberate damage, as you mentioned, perimeter being penetrated, connectivity attacks, substations, mechanical, electrical plant, anything kind of physical to the building. I would assume and imagine that's that they're the threats that we're trying to protect ourselves against. You mentioned drones and other third-party devices. So I guess what you've mentioned there is very salient and to the point. From us, obviously, we see that data centers nowadays, strategic targets, aren't they? They're easily spotted. Your tier 1, tier 2 regions are common. They're densely populated. You see them posted on media channels on a daily basis. We know who the hyperscalers are in there. We know what type of connectivity and infrastructure is going to be deployed. So, they're no longer secret locations hosting vast amounts of data and basically supporting government functions and services now. So, we see, or we feel that there are going to be attacks, there is going to be disruption, but it's how we kind of try and prevent those attacks, reduce them, or keep the environment operational whilst under attack. From a cyber perspective, standard ransomware, double exfiltration attacks. We're looking at credential misuse, identities being cloned. Once you get into the network itself, we're looking at kind of lateral movement around, so accessing other areas of the infrastructure. So you're getting into the core, then you move into the storage, into network, then into critical services like your BMS and HVAC. So once you're in and moving around, it can be quite destructive. So we feel that designing infrastructure networks with appropriate separation, segregation across those services, deploying technology and designing the infrastructure in a way which number of different options around converging networks or looking at siloed or air-gapped. There's pros and cons for each, but deploying the right level of cyber technology aligned with physical devices that yourselves, Axis, will be deploying is going to be quite critical to kind of reducing these physical threats that we'll see.
Excellent, Stuart. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. If we look at from an operator standpoint, how are operators adapting the physical security strategies to align with the new CNI expectations? Steve, if I sort of put that to yourself, what's your thoughts on that?
UK data center operators are adapting to new CNI expectations, embedding security by design principles and threat-led planning. They're conducting the formal TVRAs, VDAs at the beginning, integrating HVM barriers into that plan, secure fencing, VRN controlled access, but whilst eliminating the concealment points. And I think that's critical from a planning perspective. Operators also aligning with MPSA standards, enhancing insider screening, and adopting a continuous assurance, intelligence sharing, and as I said before, cyber physical convergence to meet the national resilient requirements.
Cheers. Thanks for that, Steve. Stuart, what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, echo Steve's comments there, really. So we're looking at standards, strengthening governance and compliance, elevating to what we spoke about, NIST, NIST2, SOC 2, American perspective, MPSA. Some of this may already be in situ, some may not, but obviously looking at hardening physical protection, perimeters, barriers, doors, CCTV, biometrics, multi-factor authentication, those type of procedures, adapting to them, I would suggest.
Okay, cool. Appreciate that. Just one point. What's the mean for stakeholders within operators, and how is that going to change for their role? Really, what you think on that point?
Yeah, I mean, the operation is obviously going to change, but the biggest practical impact potentially will be, and often felt by those on the ground. So operational team, engineering team, technical team, security, that are kind of managing daily operations. So you're likely to see increased accountability, vigilance, additional responsibilities for staff, additional training requirements. You'll start to see, I guess, operational pressure with the new responsibilities and accountabilities that the same individuals may have. Frameworks will become more demanding, workload likely to increase. Obviously, there's a lot now around complying in readiness and not just periodic periods of time. So yeah, it will probably become more demanding for those on the ground that are operating these facilities.
Cool. Thanks for that. So just moving on. So in terms of the role that technology like AI-enabled surveillance, smart sensors, robotics, what are they playing in terms of enhancing security? So I think from an access standpoint, we classify our cameras as smart IoT sensors, and we're generating continuously thousands of data points within the data center environment. And we're trying to push our video security surveillance solutions beyond the traditional approach. So we see our surveillance cameras as smart IoT sensors. We're looking at how we can get more value from a health and safety perspective, from an operational efficiency perspective, a business intelligence perspective. Like a couple of scenarios we have is where we've got cameras, edge computing cameras with advanced AI analytics, sort of identifying fire, identifying smoke, identifying water pooling in immersive cooling conditions, identifying the heat, the temperature. We look at different areas around whether people are wearing PPE equipment. We look at fall detection, tailgating. So we see our devices as very much smart sensors within that environment. And we're trying to always continuously look, how can we connect other smart sensors with our smart sensors, create more data points, and what's the value associated with that? From your standpoint, Stuart, to go to yourself first, what's your thoughts on that?
AI-enabled surveillance. So from a cyber perspective and an integration with physical, there's a number of pillars that we would look at, and the industry are looking at to try and drive more efficiency by using AI models. Threat detection and prevention would be one. Automated incident responses and how we act upon incidents would be two. And then we're looking at the network and infrastructure protection. So when we go back to threat detection and prevention, things like AI-powered intrusion detection systems, which will analyze the network and traffic patterns in real time, detecting anomalies that may signal cyber attacks or potential cyber breaches. Then we're looking at behavioral analytics, so machine learning tools that are currently looking at an established baseline of what the normal user and system behavior is, and then anything outside of that would deviate a trigger and automated alert. That could align with physical securities, like you mentioned with your IoT devices. Automated incident response, so real-time mitigation, so breaches to systems. We can automatically isolate or isolate a compromised device. So developments in AI to understand that is definitely going to be something that will help improve process and efficiencies. And then you kind of network an infrastructure layer and protection around firewalls and AI gateways. So continuously learning from attack patterns. Sometimes they're sporadic, sometimes they're not. So it's how we go about understanding what these patterns are and what we can then protect against moving forward. Adapting your firewall rules dynamically, looking at zero trust architecture. So no longer will we have firewalls at the perimeter that are assessing data coming in and out. A zero policy will basically verify every single piece of traffic in real time. So there's a lot of development, a lot will align with physical security, but it's a fairly new topic. There's a lot that's being driven by your AI developers at the moment, and we just need to play catch up and kind of understand more about that space and how it's going to improve surveillance. Yeah, it's an interesting point. Like in terms of the development of AI technologies in the data center sector, who's sort of taking responsibility for driving this? Where do you see that sort of sitting, Stuart? I think it's a combination of a number of different stakeholders. So you've got your large blue chip organizations, tech firms, AI developers, system vendors such as yourself that will come to market with new innovation but need integration into AI platforms. Government will have to get to a point where they'll regulate certain AI standards, MPSA, NCSC. It's going to be a multitude and multifaceted approach, I think. Not one organization.
No, cool. Thanks for that. So we move on to our third area around collaboration and future outlook. So how can the industry better collaborate across operators, vendors, and government to create a unified approach to physical security? Steve, I'll position that one to yourself first, if that's okay.
Sure. I think it needs to be through a more connected information sharing approach between operators, vendors, and government. I've talked a lot about collaboration, and I think that's essential. I think developing common threat awareness networks, aligning practices, again for me through TVR, AVDA, etc., but referencing MPSA guidance will promote a greater consistency. And then echoing things discussed before, regular joint forums, assurance programs can help build shared understanding, encourage best practices, which is key, and support a coordinated, resilient, focused security culture across the UK's data infrastructure.
Okay, thanks for that, Steve. Stuart, what's your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, very similar to Steve's there, and aligned to previous question around responsibilities of AI. I think this is a no single vendor approach. You know, it's an ecosystem that needs to come together to drive this better, multifaceted. It's going to be, you know, government related, governing bodies, hyperscaler community, engineering, construction organizations. I guess we're looking at kind of common forums or shared platforms. Physical and cyber need to be aligned better. Coordination from design, consultation, professional teams, clients themselves. Unified forums, and looking at lessons learned again from others, whether or not we can adapt or form part of other CNI sectors and work closer with them. I guess it's quite a complex task, but multifaceted, as mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much for that. So looking at the CNI designation, do we believe it's going to accelerate investment in physical security infrastructure upgrades? Stuart, to put that one straight to yourself.
Yeah, I think absolutely it will do. Frameworks, legislation will have to elevate standards. The standards we regulated, therefore, you know, you're going to have to see remediation even in new investments. So we're already seeing re-engineering of systems in facilities that we've worked with or work with currently. Designs changing to meet these latest standards. Resilience built in to support remote locations. Software is being deployed to manage risk, certain vulnerabilities that weren't captured previously that now need to be captured and assessed. Mapping of campuses connectivity, discovering of all devices in field, not just security, but BMS related as well. So yeah, investment must come. We're seeing it already. These new standards and CNI regulations will definitely elevate what the norm is, which will, in our eyes and what we've seen firsthand, increase investment.
Yeah, look, from an access standpoint, we've seen it pre-September 2024 running up to this. We've seen so many retrofits, so many design changes across the board, and we've also got the added complexity at the pace at which this market is growing, that a lot of things, a lot of projects which are actually being designed now are outdated in 3 or 4 months' time. Yeah. So added layer of complexity there. Steve, from your perspective, what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I echo what Stuart and you just commented on. I think it will accelerate investment into the physical infrastructure upgrades. It raises expectations for resilience, assurance, and compliance. It will prompt operators to prioritize, as you mentioned before, Peter, an HVM from not just typical bollards or barriers, but through fencing and creating that ring of steel around a DC at the beginning. So perimeter hardening, access validation, and integrated monitoring systems. Beyond compliance, I believe this is an opportunity to future-proof assets and align with national standards and demonstrate security, maturity, and operational reliability to clients and regulators alike.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Excellent. I'm just conscious of the time. We've got 3 minutes left. We have got a question in the chat there, and I'll put it to you guys if you want to answer. With CNI status, should future site selection be guided more tightly by national strategy, for example, distance from flood plans, substations, or high risk zones? Or do you guys want to take that one?
My answer would be yes, definitely. But I think we've elaborated on ensuring that the right protections in place from the beginning. But yeah, I think that's a great comment.
Stuart, any thoughts on that? We just leave it there at that.
That's fine, mate. I mean, yeah, we're more within. So connectivity to the environment, to the build. There'll be some regulation around redundancy in and out of the build. But obviously, that's quite a complex and large topic to answer concisely. But yeah, I'd say yes.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes. Very quickly, looking ahead in the future, what does data centers look like in 5 and 10 years? If you want to give us a very quick, Stuart, put that to yourself.
Okay, so briefly, yeah, we're looking, I guess we're going to be moving away from your typical human-led protection, intelligent infrastructure. We'll see more automation, robotics, your drones that you've mentioned about previously, unified SOCs, zero trust policies. So the way that we design and build cyber into the network will change. Earlier we mentioned around self-learning systems, continuously monitoring of network activity, understanding user behavior better. But this will all be geared towards kind of AI technology, which will improve the efficiency here.
Go, Steve.
Yeah, I would echo everything that Stuart just said. I think design principles will continue to emphasize security by design, sustainability, resilience, and supported by, again, closer collaboration between industry and government to maintain that trusted, proportionate safeguards.
Excellent. Thanks for that. So it just about brings us up out of time. I'd like to thank Stuart and Steve for their participation today. From an access standpoint, if you want to understand a bit more what we do, I encourage you to check me out on LinkedIn or visit one of our 9 experience centers dotted around Europe. And I'll just leave on one note. Physical security is now a strategic imperative, not an afterthought. Collaboration and innovation will define how resilient our data center infrastructure becomes. The question is, are we ready to move from compliance to true security leadership? Thanks very much for your time today, guys. And yeah, appreciate it.